So, hey, first let me start off by saying I'm sorry for the static in the background that you hear, such as right now. Yeah, that's kind of just my mic and mixing board, you know what I'm saying. And so this video is going to be made to Philos, who did the video 5 questions every intelligent atheist must answer, and I am an atheist, and I am being very humble. I would say I'm quite intelligent. And so I've compiled a list and answers to his questions. So the first one was, he stated about God of the gaps, and he's like, well, don't scientists use chance of the gaps? And I'm going to have to say, no, scientists don't use chance. We use probability. And by saying we, I'm a very scientific person, and so I'm kind of going to include myself in that, but I'm not going to be saying, I'm a wonderful scientist like Carl Sagan or the great Richard Dawkins. Oh. But, so we use probability. Example, if you have an infinite amount of time, X will happen. So say you have an infinite amount of throws, and you have 100 pennies, and you throw them. No matter how many times you throw them, if you have an infinite amount of possible throws, eventually they will all land on heads, regardless of how many times, like, according to the law of averages states, if you have an infinite amount of time, X will happen regardless of how unlikely it seems. So if I have an infinite amount of time throwing pennies in the air, eventually all of them will land on heads, according to the law of averages. And then you said about Darwin having random selection, that's based off chance. It's not based off chance. It's based off of which traits need to, like, which traits are most dominant, well, I feel like an idiot. Which traits are more dominant and survive and go into the next generation? Take the pepper moths of England, for example. Before the Clean Air Act of England, they, I believe it's the pepper moths. I'll link in the genitalia. I believe it's the pepper moths. And before the Clean Air Act in England, the trees were really sooty, and so the black moths would fit in. They would blend in, and they would survive, and any white moths that were born would be picked off easily by hawks and other animals that eat moths. I don't really know what animals eat moths, but you know what I'm saying. Get my drift. And then, once the Clean Air Act passed and all the trees were cleaned, they were white again, they were birch bark. And it was in northern England. By the way, a little tidbit of information for you. But all the trees were cleaned, and so the black moths started dying off because they were more visible. And then that trait became less used, and natural selection picked out that the moths having the white feathers, like, survived. And it wasn't random, it wasn't, well, I guess you could say it was random, but it wasn't chance that happened. It was what they adapted to the environment. So your next question was, why should there be something instead of nothing? And that's also a question for you. Why would God make us? Why? What's the point? There is no point. And so, then you stated how Earth seems to be fixed for life. I beg to differ on that point, seeing as if we go any lower than a few miles underground, we burn and die. If we go above a few miles above ground, not in an airplane, we will suffocate or freeze to death. And I forget where I read a statistic, but like, the whole volume of the Earth and atmosphere, only like 1% of it is actually habitable out of the whole volume of the Earth, which is kind of, you know, that doesn't seem like it's so much fine-tuned. It's like finding a billion. No, this is actually taken from a video which I saw. I will also have a link in the genitalia for it, just because I'm borrowing this out of that video. But if you have like 6 million rocks just like the moon, and you find bacteria on one of them, you will say that those rocks have been, well, you can't say intelligently that those rocks have been fine-tuned for that bacteria to live. Out of 3 million, you find one that has bacteria. No. And we are just lucky enough to be close enough to the habitable zone of a star, and if we weren't, the organisms back in the primordial soup most likely would have evolved differently. They would have evolved to suit the colder climate, or the warmer climate, depending on how close or how far away we were from the sun. And moving on to your third question, where do I get my morals from? I get my morals from where I live. the time period that I'm growing up in, and what is socially acceptable. And you kept saying morals evolve. Morals do not evolve. I'm sorry if that's what you've been told, but morals do not evolve. Like, take if you were living in Nazi Germany, for example. Shunning, beating, insulting, and even killing Jews was acceptable. It was the norm there. It was allowed because it was Nazi Germany. Nowadays, if I went out, well, I'm partly Jewish, by the way. Gotta take a look at the nose, even though I'm not even in this video. This is just a voiceover, but yeah, I like Jews. But if you went out on the street and I were out to kill a Jew, I would, one, be arrested. But I'd also be very... And if I went out on the street and just insulted Jews, saying, "You a Jew, you're a dirty Jew," I would kind of be shunned. People wouldn't like me. And that would be against my morals. I would feel bad inside because I just insulted my own race of people. And take if you were a white slave owner, or generally a white male living in the South during the time of slavery, calling a black person the N-word was fine. It wasn't bad. It didn't matter to you. Separating them from their families didn't matter to you. It wouldn't hurt your morals. Nowadays, if you stole a black father from his children, you would most likely, if you were a person that wasn't totally evil, you would be eaten up inside. You'd be like, "I just stole this kid's father from him." It's like, I can't go out on the street and call somebody, go out and say, "You n***." It's like, that's just not acceptable. By the way, I didn't say the N-word, I said ninja. Yeah, I'm not racist. But, so, I mean, I would be shunned. People would not like me, and I'd probably be punched in the face, and with good reason. Your question 4 was, how did morals evolve? There's a simple answer. They didn't evolve. It's the same answer to number 3. It all depends on where you live, the time period you live in, and the social acceptability of it. And then, for 5, how can complex organisms come out of nothing? This is kind of the irreducible complexity argument. And I'll take the eye, for example. The eye originally started with photoreceptors and nerves. Then it grew more concave, so the light was more focused, like it blocked out certain parts of it, so you had a more focused view of it. Then it became a pinhole, like a pupil, so there weren't pupils then in that stage of evolution, but the light was even more focused, and then the lenses evolved. And there was a lens as focused as the light, and they'll also, in the genitalia, include a link to the evolution of the eye. And there's this graphic, which is up right now, which is, they're pictures of the evolution of the eye. And so, as you can clearly see, creationists generally, a lot of the time, use the evolution of the eye as an example of God. But that just can't be the case, because it shows that the eye can evolve. And your questions are perfectly valid, but I also thought, after seeing your video, I had to answer them, because, I don't know, it just thought it applied to me, and so I answered your questions. I hope you watch this video. If you don't, that's okay, but you know what, I think it'd be really cool if you did. I'll talk to you later, I guess. Be sure to subscribe, even though you probably won't, Philos, but just anyone else, be sure to subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye.